Hello guys, it's Mrs. Ferguson, and today we're sitting outside. It's really nice. Here in Southern California we don't get what we're going to read about, but well, if you go on the Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland you see them. They're called Fireflies. But they have them in other parts of the country, and it's a really neat book. I actually was kind of shown this book and learned about it from Mrs. Source. It was a book she had requested, and when I found it and read it, I really liked it. So I'm going to share it with you guys too. It's called Fireflies, and it's story and pictures by Julie Brinklow. And I think most of you probably know what fireflies are. So even though we don't have them here, but they're pretty cool. Here, I'm going to kind of turn the camera a little bit. On a summer evening, I looked up from dinner through the open window to the backyard. It was growing dark. My tree house was a black shape in the tree, and I wouldn't go up there now. Let's see if we can get that on camera there. There it is. But something flickered there. A moment. I looked, and then it was gone. It flickered again, over near the fence. Fireflies. Don't let your dinner get cold, said Mama. I forked the meat and corn and potatoes into my mouth. Please, may I go out? The fireflies. Mama smiled and Daddy nodded. Go ahead, they said. I ran from the table, down to the cellar to find a jar. I knew where to look, behind the stairs. The jars were dusty, and I polished one clean on my shirt, and then I ran back up 2 steps at a time. Holes, I remembered, so they can breathe. And as quietly as I could, so she wouldn't catch me dulling them, I poked holes in the top of the jar with Mama's scissors. The screen door banged behind me as I ran from the house. If someone said, "Don't slam it," I wasn't listening. I called to my friends in the street, "Fireflies!" But they had come before me with polished jars, and others were coming from behind. The sky was darker now, and my ears rang with crickets, and my eyes stung from staring too long. I blinked hard as I watched them, fireflies, blinking on, blinking off, dipping low, soaring high above my head, making white patterns in the dark. And we ran like crazy, barefoot in the grass. Catch them, we cried, grasping at the lights. Suddenly, a voice called out above the others, "I caught one!" It was my own. Yeah, it's a little bent there. There we go. I thrust my hand into the jar, and I spread it open, and the jar glowed like moonlight. And I held it in my hands, and I felt a tremble of joy, and I shouted, "I can catch hundreds." Then we dashed about, waving our hands in the air like nets, catching 2, 10, hundreds of fireflies, thrusting them into jars and waving our hands for more. Then someone called from my house, "It's time to come in now." And others called from other houses, and then it was over. And then my friends took jars of fireflies to different homes. I climbed the stairs to my room, and I set the jar on a table by my bed. My mama kissed me and turned out the light. "I caught hundreds," I said. It's getting a little dark here. Daddy called from the hallway, See you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile, I called back. I caught hundreds of fireflies. Well, in the dark, I watched the fireflies from my bed, and they blinked on and off, and the jar glowed like moonlight. But it wasn't the same. The fireflies, they beat their wings against the glass, and then they fell to the bottom, and then they just lay there. And then the light in the jar, it turned yellow, like a flashlight that's been left on too long. And I tried to swallow, but something in my throat wouldn't go down. And then the light, it grew dimmer, green, like moonlight underwater. I shut my eyes tight. I put the pillow over my head. They were my fireflies. I caught them. They made moonlight in my jar. But now the jar is nearly dark. So I flung off the covers and I went to the window and I opened the jar and then I aimed it at the stars. Fly! And then the jar began to glow, green, and then gold, and then white as the moon. And the fireflies, they poured out into the night. Fireflies. Blinking on, blinking off, dipping low, soaring high above my head, making circles around the moon like stars dancing. I held the jar, dark and empty, in my hands. The moonlight and the fireflies swam in my tears, but I could feel myself smiling. That's the end. Did you like that? Let's read what the back says, because this one I like what's on the back. It says, "The delicate, sensitive story reflects a classic theme in children's literature, the need to set something free in order to keep it. The tale is embellished with lovely, wistful pencil drawings of the boy and his friends leaping about in the twilight, and of his expressive face showing his mingled joy and sadness." And I like that. That pretty much describes this book. I love the illustrations and I love the story. They set it free so he could actually keep it, because what happened when they were in the jar? What was starting to happen to them? Yeah, we know. They were starting to die. So once he let them out, they were able to be what they're meant to be. So I like that story. And we have several copies of this in our library. So when we come back, you'll be able to read that too. You might even be able to find it online if you want to read it again. So, okay, on to the next one. What will it be? Stella Luna or Smell My Foot? Bye.